Alright, we're going to do some beaver skinning. Everybody wants the beaver. Everybody loves the beaver. All the critters on the trap line. And so the trapper is right in line. The thing about the beaver is that all the predators, that's their number one food source. If they can get it, they won't take and they won't go to nothing else if they take and, if there's beaver available. Now, I'm going to look at the beaver here a little bit and look at the claws. They kind of have their claws for a specific purpose. You can see they've got the one little really dainty one there. The beaver is a picker. The beaver likes to clean house a little bit. On the back end, they've got kind of an awful set of claws. You can see how dull he's actually got that one claw there. But the more interesting one is the one that he uses to take and clean his fur with. He's got a split nail and he combs insects and whatnot out of his fur. Kind of interesting. And that, folks, is not a nutsack. That there is some big time heavy duty casters. The scent glands and also the oil glands that they smear on their fur there to keep themselves waterproof. But I mean, as far as the size of these beavers, these are both big adults. But that is a heavy duty set of casters that this beaver is sporting right there. This beaver over here is bigger, smaller casters. Now what I'm going to do with these things is I'm going to take and skin them. I'm going to take and skin these two beavers and I'm going to freeze their hides. Flushing and forming for the beavers and the coyotes that I got left is going to happen here probably in a couple weeks, I guess. And then I'm going to take those carcasses and then I'm going to put them in those 5-gallon pails. May not be for the faint of heart. But what I can tell you is it is a smoker lure. Not really a bait. You're not feeding nothing with it. But what you end up getting is a wicked awesome lure. I'll tell you a little bit more about it when I get to that process, but right now I'm going to take and throw on some gloves, wash my hands and throw on some gloves and skin these babies up. What I want to do with these beaver is I'm going to try and form these Johnny Thorpe way. And I'm going to take and cut their hand up. You might want to come out of there. I'm going to take and skin these straight up the middle. And then when it comes time, when I put them on the forming board, instead of me just having a circle, I'm going to take and cut across from the front leg right into the middle, and from the back leg right into the middle. Now, it looks like it's a long way, but what ends up happening is when you see all the perfect pictures of a beaver that's being put on a board and stretched, it's not an actual true likeness of the way that this hide actually wants to get formed. It's just because they are kind of belly fat and stuff. It's relatively speaking, that's the easiest way to take and deal with them. But when you look at all this fur here that there is from here to here on a board, you're probably only going to end up with about half that distance, something like that. And I saw old Johnny Thorpe there. What he did is he just cut straight across here and he basically still made an oval. He just had to trim a little bit at the legs, but he end up with a pelt that has no holes in it, less the Skinner's problems and anomalies that he comes up with, and or the head itself. But so that's what my plan is. That's what I want to do. So I'm going to take one of these critters and lay him off to the side. And then once I'm done with these, what I'm going to do is I'm going to disembowel this critter, and I'm going to take the carcass and stuff it in a pail, and I'll kind of show you a trick that Buddy showed me that works really good for wolves. And you take the carcass and you end up putting it in a 5-gallon pail, and what you do is, the work isn't done there yet. You take and you have to leave it in the sunshine and in a shed for a couple years. And there's no real kind of set time frame for how long you have to leave them, but what I've found is you almost can't leave them too long. They do just end up getting very, very ripe. And the critters comfortable. That's what we want, right, Alex? Now, again, the beaver carcass is so valuable as far as for bait. If you're going to freeze them and put them in the deep freeze, ideally what you want is you want to leave that tail on there. You get something you can take and grab onto. But in my case, what we're into it for here is these two beavers are purely getting set up for bait. The tail goes in, goes straight into the pail. We got no need to take and leave it on the carcass. This is not a speed skinning video. One thing that I am always really kind of curious about is I prefer to have a nice hide to work with. But more importantly, especially beavers, the value in the carcass is so great that it means just as much to be able to take and end up with this carcass intact and not all the guts coming out everywhere. Not only does it make a mess, but it's a lot harder to deal with them. Even when I'm going to take and stuff them in a pail today, it still makes it a pain in the ass. Got my snowmobile ripped apart, but today kind of switching gears and going on to the beaver, eh, Alex? And yeah, this wasn't really planning on skinning in here. Well, I'm going to end up making a little bit of a mess in here, but floors can get washed, which is ultimately what we're going to have to do here. The difference with beavers and big game animals, for example, when you go and kill a beaver, and you got to lay them down and skin them, you're dealing with a lot of blood, especially when they're nice and fresh, I guess. Not always. This one here is going to bleed quite a bit. Get him around the face. Just doing a little beaver skinning video, Sherry.
Okay.
Supper was very good. Thank you. Guys are skinning beaver in under a minute, Alexander. I don't know if when they're trying to do the speed skinning videos, I don't think they like going for the biggest, most mature beaver. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A little bit of a smaller one, so a little easier to do, right? They take and they get her done quick. Yeah, and this in the back here, it really pays to be just a little bit careful. If you're not skinning hundreds of beavers, then it is a lot easier to cut holes in hides. So like I said, this beaver right here on last year's auction, the one that was just in spring, this beaver fetched like $25 maybe. I have to look again, but they didn't sell worth a hoot for prices. So at least it gives the guy a chance if you want to tan him. I think this knife is quite sharp. You might as well end up with a nice hide. You want to tan it, you don't have holes in it. Bust it up. Soldier isn't afraid of a little blood, eh?
No. Just be careful you don't lose them off the back.
End of the table. There we go. That turned out really good. Really good. Nice spring beaver caught under the ice. And we're going to take and open him up. And we're going to pull his guts out. Now the only way that I've done this is by taking his guts out, but I leave the lungs and the heart and the liver in here, but I take the guts out. And I've never tried it different, but I've been told that your bait might get sour. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the case is there, whether or not that's fact, how that really works. But at the end of the day, these baits that I've run, they work. So I'm just going to take the guts and put them in a separate pail, and then I'm going to take and cut this carcass in 2 pieces, and I'm going to take at least 1 caster and leave it with the front, and that is enough to let that stew for a year or 2 to be a really good bait. So we got those bales here loaded up. These particular pails, they don't have a spout. Like I said, the skunk is not going to go in with these. I'm going to just snap these shut. Sealed up. I didn't have these pinholes in there. Sorry, I did have the pinholes in there, but I had the pails too full. So what ended up happening was the pails were so full, once it started liquefying, the carcass floated to the top, and then the carcass floated to the top, and then it sealed off those tiny little pinholes, and then all hell broke loose, and the tops come off. The tops actually opened up, and then it festered and spewed out of there. Bad, really bad. Like coyotes come to this shed 12 months a year with their tongues hanging out. Like the shed smells so bad, the flies aren't even going near it. Like strong enough to scare a buzzard off a shit wagon like that. I mean, uber. So what I do now is I just make sure either I'll take a 1-year-old, like a 1-year-old kit, small beaver. I can take and put that carcass in there. I just got them, put the carcass in there, and then it's not too much. But other than that, you need a full pail with just a half of an adult beaver in there to keep that carcass low. You don't want that thing to be so full that when the body ends up like the skeleton, you know, everything kind of liquefies and then it becomes the carcass kind of floats to the top. So that's the deal. Boom, there you go. 2 smoking bait pails. We're gonna give these a few birthdays. We'll take and mark them.
Hey.
How do you think the disemboweling of the beavers, how's that gonna go? You know what? I'm gonna tell a quick story. So a friend of mine is a trapper, and he's got a trapping license. And he's got permission to trap this creek. And it's right by his house. And he comes home, and his wife says to him, there was 2 beavers killed on the road this morning. Did you see them? No, I hadn't seen them. Or he was away, I don't know what the deal was. But she tells him this story about these beavers that the creek kind of runs underneath the road, and the beavers were on the road, they got run over. So some folks came, and they dug graves for the beaver and gave them a proper burial. And they put crosses in there, and you know, they felt that was the right thing to do. You know, these poor animals, they got run over. You know, we gotta, you know, my goodness, you know, they were shook up over this deal.
How humane, inhumane. Sorry.
So anyway, my buddy, we're not gonna mention any names. Not that I don't think he broke any rules. Like I said, he had the legal right to take and trap that creek. But at any rate, his wife is telling him this story, and she's not quite done with the story, and he's on his way out the door to his truck, and he grabs a shovel on his way past. And when he first told me the story, at that point, he cues in, he says, so as I was exhuming the graves, a thought occurred to me. And the rest of the story was not important. It made me laugh. As I was exhuming the graves. It was like it was a scene right out of Goodfellas. So, here he went in, and here's these 2 beavers, big adult beavers, in shallow graves that he took home, skinned them. It was in the springtime. Like beavers are on the move in the spring. Took them home, skinned them, and threw the carcasses in the deep freeze because trappers need bait for the fall. Yeah. There you go. As I was exhuming the graves, I don't know, that's kind of
Great, Robert.
okay.